Thank you for joining us and welcome to midweek edition of Business Morning. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago. As the international community continues to follow developments in the United States following an election which saw the former Vice President Joe Biden emerge as the president-elect, analysts have been looking at what a Biden win will mean not just for the global economy, but for Nigeria-U.S. trade relations. While the United States is Nigeria's main trading partner, Nigeria's exports to the U.S. continue to primarily be crude oil and agricultural produce, while imports are largely wheat, vehicles, machinery, and plastics. Both countries did around $10 billion of trade in 2019. Let's have this conversation with a trade expert, John Isemede. Thank you very much, Mr. Isemede, for joining us on the program. Well, with Biden presidency, are we likely to see a shift towards a more liberal trade globally?
Across the globe, yes. But within Nigeria, the answer is no.
Why do you say so?
Because now the issue in America is not very clear. People said Biden won the election, and Trump is saying that he's not giving up, and we don't know how it's going to end, and whether it's going to be power sharing that he's teaching us, or they will go to the electoral court. They will go to the Supreme Court. The truth of the matter is that if you look at American foreign policy, the central point, or the summary of American foreign policy is nothing but interest, interest, interest. That of Nigeria is Africa is a cornerstone. We fight for other people and we don't put our own house in order. If we look at the whole scenario, President Joe Biden is not the first American president. We don't want to go back to history. We know what Abraham Lincoln did, how people were brought back to West Africa and resettled them. What Jimmy Carter did, and today Jimmy Carter footprint is still in Zambia. The Sasakawa project, maize project and all that. What of Clinton? What of George Bush, the AGOA? What of our own brother, Obama? So the issue of saying that things will change, yeah, there was jubilation all over the world, because what we'll be hearing was America and China, and people were jubilating that with the exit of Trump, things will improve, because those countries have trade policy. But here, we don't have a trade policy. We only depend on importation.
Now, we have seen, of course, so far our trade relations with the United States. Now, are we likely to see more trade between Nigeria and the United States?
The answer is no. Let me give you the picture from 1960. We got independence on the 1st of October. Before then, America has already established a mission in Nigeria. In September 1960, America opened their embassy. And Joseph Palmer was the first American ambassador to Nigeria. And what we've seen all along, 1960 to 1970 could have been a golden era for Nigeria. That was the time we got our independence. Although the leaders at that time came up with what we call the National Rolling Plan. When we got independent, the contribution of oil to our GDP was only 1%. When the military came in 1966, it was 9% of our GDP. Look at the situation today. And during that period of 1960 to 1970, infrastructure was not the problem. We had the Nigerian Airways we inherited from the British in 1958. The railway system was very efficient. Then between 70 and 90, after the Civil War, we did not devalue our currency. We did have issues. Between 70 and 1980, was the era of cement and mother and all that. We had so much money, and there was little or not on investment. 1980, that was when we had the first shock. We did not even look inwards. And what we were doing at that time was, after the cement and mother, we were coming with all the policies of stabilization and all that. 1990 was when the MDA started coming. Today, we have more than 1,000 MDA. Over 400 of them cannot even pay salary, because the people we have appointed are not giving target. Their own is to organize seminars and workshops. 2000, we started selling agricultural infrastructure. And today, where have we found ourselves? That we are begging America. When America came up with the issue of AGOA, how did we fare? What did we do? Can we compete with Ghana on AGOA? So there are so many questions.
Yeah. So I mean, you're trying to paint a picture there that it doesn't matter whether it's Biden or even Trump, but the issue is how we try to get ours right. So can you tell me, what issue do you really have with Nigeria's trade policy?
Thank you very much. Every country must have a foreign policy. Our own foreign policy, from the time of the Prime Minister Balewa in 1960, to the first Foreign Affairs Minister, Chief Jaja Wanchuku, to the present day, our foreign policy has not changed. Our foreign policy is not tied to trade. We have a foreign policy, we have a foreign policy objective, but we don't have a foreign policy strategy. How can we engage? Today, we have more than 10 different groups advising Mr. President, economic team, the focal points. We are talking of those on trade facilitation. We are talking of ease of doing business in a country that has no trade policy. The last trade policy we have was signed in Doha, the one we took to Doha in 2001. And from that time, in Geneva, we could not. In Kenya in 2015, but we have to give it to Dr. Agaga. In 2011, he set up a committee, which I was a member. In 2013, he took that policy to Bali in Indonesia to be approved by the WTO. Came back today, as I'm talking to you, that thing is gathering dust. So a country without a foreign policy, how can you engage America? That's why some of us came up about a year ago. I was here with you when we were talking of Africa Continental Free Trade. The first question I asked is that ECOWAS Secretariat have been in Abuja for the past 45 years. What has been the benefit? That trade within West Africa is only 5%. In the African continent, it's 14%. Are we waiting for America for us to have critical infrastructure for us to engage our neighbors? Because we don't have a Nigerian carrier. We don't have a shipping line. Our port is not configured to handle export. And we don't even have quality system or quality infrastructure. If you go to my 12, what you see there, you cannot trace it back to the farm. But what the import you see from South Africa and all that, for Apple, you can trace it back to the country, to the tree, and to the farm. So how are we going to engage America, even if Biden is there? Because we are not prepared. They gave us AGOA on the platter of gold, in line with the ACP agreement of the Lomé Convention, which we have not performed.
Right. Okay, you talked about interest, which is, of course, what America tries to portray. And we saw that policy of protectionism play out greatly under President Trump. Now we have the WTO, to coordinate the global trade. And then, of course, who becomes the Director General of WTO has been an issue. And with our own Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala being the prospect, and then it seems the U.S. is trying to block that. What's the possibility that this could actually happen, that Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala would emerge as the Director General of the WTO, be it under Biden or even Trump?
Thank you very much. WTO is not the first thing. After the Second World War, there were alignments around the world. We had GATT, General Agreement of Trade and Tariff. It was started by 23 members. And in January 1995, the WTO came up. And part of it was the first meeting on the Uruguay round. A lot of issues, a lot of things were discussed. And today we have 164 members. Out of the 54 African members, only Eritrea is not a member of the WTO. The issue of Okonjo-Iweala and other, let us leave it, because I have a lot to say. And the other issue, again, is that even when Nigeria was suspended or out of the Commonwealth, our daddy, Chief Emeka Onyeko, was there. So if our sister is there, or Okonjo-Iweala and all that, the basic issue that which he discussed is that what we have on the table at home. How are we working together? Are we coordinating things? A country without a national carrier, and we are talking of border closure. We want to suffocate the economy. So let us put that, because after the announcement, I will come back to this studio and tell you how we can engage. You have your father as a principal of a school, does not mean that you get certificate.
Yeah. So for you as a trade expert, what do you think Nigeria should actually begin to do now, not just to firm up trade relations with the U.S., but trade relations with other countries?
All right. If you look at the U.S., Nigeria is just 10% in the size of the U.S. because U.S. is about almost 10,000, 10 million square kilometers. Nigeria is a little less than 1 million. The population of America or the United States is 330. Nigeria is 210. That Nigeria is 65%. Look at the population of Nigeria. Compare if we now talk of size. The economy. United States control about 30% of the world economy. When you talk of import and export and all that. What of Nigeria? What of their foreign reserves is only 35,000. It's only 35,000 US dollar. If you look at oil and we multiply by the exchange rate and all that, less than 200 naira comes to you and me on a daily basis. So if we now say we want to engage the United States on the world basis, let us go back to the days of David Ricardo of 1772 to 1823. The law of comparative advantage. There's what we call comparative advantage, so also absolute advantage. Even in agriculture and other, there's what we call yield. America is not producing cocoa. America is not producing palm oil. America is not producing shea butter. Let us take it one by one. Palm oil. We were the #1 producer as far back as 1960. We were producing 50% of the world requirement. And by 1960, when we got independent, it reduced to 27%. Today, we are producing 1%, consuming 4%. 94 is dying. Nobody is looking at that direction. These are areas we can engage America. When you talk of comparative advantage, it's not borrowing money from Brazil. It's a shame that Nigeria is borrowing money from Brazil, borrowing from China. These are countries that were at par with us at 1960. All right. If you now look at palm oil, Nigeria is importing tallow. So why is the value of the naira going down if it's just because of importation and we're not producing? Then if you talk of cocoa, I have traveled around the United States. I did not see any cocoa tree or cocoa plantation. Nigeria is the third or fourth largest producer of cocoa. And if you take of third or largest producer, then we have going to control about 20% of the world production. Can we boast of 1% of cocoa that Nigeria started exporting cocoa beans as far back as 1910? For 110 years, we are still importing cocoa beans. We are not adding value. If we now leave United States for a moment, the biggest cocoa crushing plant in the world is located behind the Nigerian embassy in Netherlands. So you talk of chocolate, you talk of this. So we are talking of engagement. Shea butter. Niger State is the #1 producer in Nigeria. Niger State is bigger than Belgium and Netherlands combined. If you look at their export of agricultural produce, it's more than what the whole of West Africa. And we are not adding value to shea butter. We are #1 producer of shea butter in the world. We are not adding value. We are good in selling and paying export expansion grant to people, middlemen in the city, and leaving the farmers to suffer. If we now look at yam, we produce 72% of the total world yam. What value are we adding? July 2017 to the present is over 3 years. Some group of people who are experts went into yam export. They abandoned experts like us. And at the end of the day, Nigeria could not export 1 tuber of yam to the United States. And we are waiting for Biden to come and change the scenario.
No,
so if you look at cassava, we produce 38%.
We seem to have a lot of
There's no
commodities
coordination.
there. Okay, fine. You talked about AGOA. Looking at all of these commodities that you have just mentioned, how much advantage would you say Nigeria has actually taken, of AGOA, to better itself? And if we haven't, how can we move forward from here?
How can we move forward? When people are talking of restructuring, people go into the political angle. We had the colony of Lagos, Southern Protectorate, Northern Protectorate. Before the amalgamation, the colony of Lagos that were carrying the same passport with British citizens merged with the South. And the country was doing very well. Even at independence, we were doing very well until 1963. Western region was one of the richest regions in the world. Chief Obafemi Awolowo was able to build Cocoa House. Chief Obafemi Awolowo opened a university, and the roads constructed because the regions were competing. The East, the North, and Northern. What are we seeing today? People have abandoned that if there's a small problem in Nigeria, people call the central government, we have 3 years of government. Is it because the federal government is taking 52 or 50% of the total? If you talk of AGOA, and each region is allowed to manage their resources and pay taxes to the center, AGOA will move forward. So it was so painful during the COVID era that some people came up in Nigeria. They called themselves poultry farmer. I have respect for them that they want to import maize. And CBN want to import maize into Nigeria in 2020. The first thing was for me to challenge my governor in Edo State, because I come from Owan West local government area. The whole of that place with Edo State, we have a lot of maize. I'm not talking of Gombe and all that. That it is easier to feed from M and bring whatever you want to bring into the country without challenging the regions and the governors. Is it at this age? There is nowhere in the world where we have not seen maize. Even maize has no season. In area where you have commodity board and commodity exchanges. What are we seeing from our commodity board or commodity exchanges? What are we seeing from raw material?
Yeah, but how much of storage facilities do we have for those grains? Because that was the problem.
In the past, we had those silos and all that. Because even the tank farm we inherited in Apapa between Liverpool and Flour Mill, they were used for export of palm oil and palm kernel oil near their oil depots. And now you have tank farm in residential areas. Because it is easier to import than to produce. Because at the end of the month, we all go to the center. So when you talk of AGOA, look at the time AGOA started in the year 2000. When the American president visited Nigeria, they took him to a village in Abuja, named a street, Big Clayton Highway. But when he got to Ghana, he was taken to market women and village processing shea butter in Ghana. I was in Tamale. I left Lagos, I went by road. Projecting the country, this is what we have. And that was the same period. Ghana bent backward to sign the EPA, that they want to encourage their own agricultural produce. But here, the whole thing is so disjointed that we have 10 different groups advising the president on the economy. And the economy is so weak. We are recording losses. We are recording more or less recession and stagnation. So from 2000 to the present day, what have we exported out of this country under AGOA? We should ask ourselves. Secondly, if you send a child to school at the end of the month, also at the end of the season, when you want to pay the school fee, you ask for the scorecard. How many of these MDAs, with the appointment and all that, have targets? So how do you check them? Apart from seminar and workshop, where they call us to come and talk. Then, look at D8. For 20 years, Nigeria, they don't issue one certificate of origin. This is a product or a produce living in Nigeria. Or what value have been added. For the first 15 years, we did not record anything in AGOA. It was an embarrassment for President Obama. He has to bend backward and extend AGOA by another 10 years. From 2015 to 2025. Now this is 2020. What have we recorded in AGOA that we are saying who is going to be president of America? Will it be better and to us or African than Abraham Lincoln, than Jimmy Carter, who was always with us here in Lagos, or Obama, our own brother, Luo? So let us now take our own destiny in our own hand and not believe that what comes from America. We have had professors, we've had good people in this country, and very many of them, by 1960, Emma Udochie was the first Nigerian High Commissioner, ambassador to Central America. America is not a member of the Commonwealth, despite the fact that it's English speaking. When you talk of America, US is not America. America has 35 countries. And America has North America, Central America, and South America. But today we talk of United States as the only America. But invariably, if you want to summarize everything, it's not America, South America. Central America, like the Caribbean and all that, in most cases, they are part of America. So We need to work inward. We need to look at the MDAs. We look at the organized private sector. It's not traveling out of this country to sign an agreement to be importers representative. Even with the pressure two of us have put in over the border closure, did you hear anything from the private sector defending their members?
They are. They are.
Which?
LCCI, Nasima.
LCCI is in a class of its own. Muda is the only person that we all know there.
Well, I guess we have to leave this conversation. Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Isemede. Well, let's just hope that we continue to work on some of these issues there, and we'll continue to talk.
America is not the world. There is no law of nature that we should tie our own destiny to America. We should tie our destiny to our own. We should review our foreign policy, trade policy, and economic diplomacy.
Good point to leave this conversation. Thank you, Mr. Isemede. Yeah, John Isemede is a trade expert. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, businesses continue to count their losses from the aftermath of NSA's protest. To stay with us. Businesses have continued to count their losses from the aftermath of the NSA's protest. The Nigerian Employers Consultative Association has put an estimated value to the losses suffered by businesses nationwide at over 5 trillion naira following the destruction and vandalization of critical investment and assets by hoodlums who hijacked the peaceful NSAS protest last month. According to the association, organized businesses became one of the victims of the attacks, which has compromised their abilities to meet obligations to their creditors, vendors, employees, and regulators, amongst many others. The president of NECA, Taiwo Adeni, is here with me to throw more light on this. Thank you very much, Mr. Taiwo, or Mr. Adeni, for joining us on the program. Now, 5 trillion naira, that's your estimated losses by your members. How did you arrive at this estimate?
Yeah, thank you very much. And thanks for this opportunity, to be able to share, more insight into what we've come to realize that, yes, we might be talking about 1 week of protest, but to our members, we're still counting. As at the last count, we've come to about 5 trillion naira. Just yesterday, we were discussing with a business owner who lost a shop where, right on Ifako Road. And just that one business is estimated to have lost about 100 million naira. Now, we have quite a number of that across the nation. Now, what you begin to, what has been done is that people have tried to put figure to what they've come to as immediate losses. But when you begin to look at other factors in terms of employment loss, in terms of infrastructural loss, in terms of replacement costs, you can't look at the cost of putting that investment together alone. You also have to look at the cost of replacement. The investment that you put together, say in 2016, is much more in terms of value. To put that investment together now, you are talking of, if not triple or quadruple of the cost that you have used. So with that, it's easy to come to terms with the fact that we are looking at 5 trillion naira as of today.
Now, how are these businesses, you said you had an engagement with some of them. It has happened, but how are these businesses trying to, recover from the losses and begin to rebuild?
To be honest with you, it's a major one. Psychologically, they've been devastated. And so the first way is to bring them together, like we had recently, to sympathize with them and to also begin to give them a voice of the fact that, yes, as an association, we'll be willing to talk to government on their behalf. Because what we find is that when individuals try to talk to government, government tends to turn their ears away. But when associations come together to take on the matters of their members, then government listens. So what we've done is to say, look, for our members, we're willing to be the voice, which we have always been, between them and government, so as to get the government to listen to them. So basically what we've done is to bring them together, get their feelings about some of the issues, lay on to their facts, and then project the facts before government. So that's what we're currently doing.
So what, in your opinion, should the government, both the state and the federal, be doing right now? What do you expect the government to do now to support these businesses in their rebuilding process?
Unfortunately, we are in an era where even the government too needs funds.
Absolutely.
And so you then ask yourself, if the government you are supposed to be running to needs funds, where is the fund going to come from? But again, you find that these are reasons why the likes of the sovereign fund have been set up. All we're asking the state and the federal government to do is to give approval for these businesses to access such funds so that they can quickly get back to business. Because the longer it takes, the will goes away. A man who is already devastated can possibly just sit around it and mourn over what has happened. But if you quickly come around him, there's every possibility that you might bring him up again and get him, because it's from the position of enlightened self-interest for government to do that. We all gain from it. And so we're calling on the state, we're calling on the federal. Yes, a lot has been said. At the wake of the events, the state government spoke, the federal government spoke, but we're saying beyond speaking, it is time to get down to work and save these businesses and let them come back to operation.
So what role can the corporate Nigeria play in this?
There's no way the government will be able to do it without the corporate Nigeria. Now, my advice would be to say, look, we have established organizations, we have established associations where these businesses belong. Because one of the problems we have also is the fact that government needed to confirm that truly the events that we see, social media you have all kinds of photoshops taking place. So the government will need to verify claims. And this can be done through these various corporate bodies, corporate associations that will then be the voice to government to be able to verify what it is that we're claiming or the businesses are claiming. So it is for government to come down to the level of organizations, set up committees quickly, not too big committees, not too large committees, to be able to quickly address these facts, because it is not about whether the government can do it. It is about whether the will to do it is there. Government has all that it takes to do it, but is the will there?
So what then can the banks and the insurance companies do to also support in this regard?
Well, let me openly appreciate the bank that have come forward to say, okay, we are willing to give interest-free loan to these businesses. But again, Nigeria as of today, that was a pronouncement made just at the wake of the protest. But today, what we have found out is that the requirement to access such loan has also become another problem. You are asking for police reports to be able to access such loan. Which police will be willing to give a report at this moment? So, again, there are several other ways to do or get documentation done. So what we're saying to the commercial banks that have come up to say we can help, is say, look, go beyond what you have as processes. Treat these cases as special cases. Come up with policies that will support this very event that has happened, without necessarily compromising on whatever standard or policies that you have. But come up with, innovate to be able to address the problem that we have at hand.
Now, what about the insurance companies? Don't forget, the insurance companies themselves are looking for money for recapitalization. So,
yeah, you took it out of me. We had an engagement with the insurance company, and one of them said, do you know what? Even us as insurers, we're looking for insurance. And so it's a big, big problem. Because what we have of this year is that we've had, quoting them now, we've had more claims than we've ever had. We're coming from a situation where it was the issue of pandemic, it was the issue of businesses not being able to continue the running of their business because high cost, without access to funds. And so the insurance is having to take up so much. And yet, we have this now. So it's a big, big problem. And we don't have too many reinsurance companies in Nigeria.
So is there a way out? Are you getting any positive vibe from them that there could be a way out? They could offer some kind of palliative for these businesses?
Again, what we expect government to do now, because at the end of the day, if businesses need to get claims from insurance, and insurance is saying, sorry, we cannot pay, then who is to adjudicate? It's the government. Government needs to come up with bailout funds, even for insurance. Because if you are asking businesses, of course, naturally, by law, they have insured the business, so they expect that the insurance company should come to their aid. Now, if the insurance company is now saying, sorry, we cannot come to your aid because of the situation we've all found ourselves, then there must be some palliative, some bailout for the insurance company to be able to do that.
Now, we've seen agencies like the FIRS granting further tax palliative to, these businesses that are affected. What's your take on that?
Yes, but I'll say to you, that is below expectation.
Why?
What they've come up to say is that the tax you are supposed to pay now, spread it over time. The tax you are supposed to pay now will give you some time to... No.
What do you expect them to say?
We expect that there will be some tax holidays. To say that, look, we can't run this business now, so we are not able to do what you expect of us at this time.
Okay, well, talking about spreading the tax, and you're talking about tax holiday. When you say tax holiday, when they give you a holiday, when you come back, I guess you're going to pay those taxes.
Yes. But the difference is that government recognizes that within the period of your not operating your business, you have this holiday of a sort. You are not paying at that time. It is not to suspend the tax. So what you find happening is that tax is being suspended. Now, if you start a business, you are not expected to start paying tax immediately. You have some tax holiday. You have some moratorium period to say, okay, until you get to this point where you are able to say, okay, this is the income you are generating vis-a-vis what your expenses are. Then you start paying your tax. So that's the kind of thing we're asking. Treat these businesses as if they are starting all over again.
But incidentally, the government is looking for money. And what way to get those money is via tax.
Yes. Again, we've also said, can you look at it now and say, okay, for such businesses, rather than pay 7.5, rather than pay the increases you have brought, can you give them some break? We're not saying zero, at all costs. But we're saying, can you look at it dispassionately and say, okay, we have increased VAT to 7.5, but for the purpose of those who have experienced this, okay, we don't want to record in our book 0. Can you say pay 5 for this period? After all, tax holidays are granted to people, those who bring investment around and say, okay, can you look at them in such way?
Now, have you started engaging the government on this?
Yes, of course. We've put forward our papers. We're expecting that government will call us for discussions or meetings, and then we can...
And they haven't done that?
That has not happened.
Now, when all of these things happened, one major talking point that came out was the issue of job losses. and we're talking about high unemployment rate. I mean, you represent the employers, all right? So what's the situation? So we're going to have more people losing their jobs. Is that what you're telling us?
Well, this is one area, as employer of labor, we try not to talk about. But the reality as of today is that we're going to have job losses, unfortunately. And I'll tell you why. For instance, I told you we had a meeting where we're looking at and assessing the impact of the protest on businesses of our members. And the kind of destruction that we have on businesses. A man said his shop was looted, assets worth millions of naira have been destroyed, meaning every member of staff at that time out of job. It could be for as short as 6 months, it could be as short as 1 year, it could be forever. And so there's no running away from the fact that there's going to be increase in unemployment and out of job numbers that we currently have. Massive. And I dare say, the reason why we're calling on government to immediately do something is so that we do not have a repeat. Because what has led to this is the fact that
but then, do you think this could have been avoided, really?
In some way, if they cry to government about the fact that the rate at which unemployment is on the increase in the country.
Because this has to do with the youths.
Yes. They're out of job, they're out of school, and nobody is paying any form of attention to them. Parents leave home in the morning and leave them. Sometimes they are sleeping. All they need to do is a call from a friend to say, look,
and they are not in school.
They are not in school, unfortunately.
And nothing is happening.
Nothing.
It seems everything is just static.
That's it.
In terms of education.
Unfortunately.
Is that a problem to you?
It is.
As an employer?
It is. Because what we're currently having is deficit in terms of skilled manpower. It's a major issue for the tomorrow of this nation.
So for you employers, I guess you also have to lend your voices to this issue of ASU and the government. I want to believe as an organized private sector, you'll also have to do something in that regard. Thank you very much, Mr. Adeni, for sharing your thoughts here on the program.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. Taiwo Adeni is the president of NECA. Okay, let's look at the Nigerian equities market. Of course, the positive trading was sustained in Tuesday's trading session following renewed interest in MTN. That gained 4.1%. We had Boer Cement, which gained 1.1%. And of course, some banking names, we had Zenith Bank, 2.3% addition, and Stanbic IBTC 4.4%. And these pushed the all-share index further up by 1.3% to 32,647 points. All right, let's talk to Tajuddin Olainka, a stockbroker with Valmont Securities. Good morning, Tajuddin. Thank you very much for coming up on the show.
Good morning.
Now, for some, the recent gains in the market is a bubble waiting to burst. Is that what it is?
I don't think so. I think market is just going through a normal recovery path. Market was in limbo for a long time because of the selling structure, because of the selling market structure. Part of that market structure is what has been collected temporarily anyway, in the case of fixed income space, that you now have a low yield environment in that space. So ideally, it is the equity market that drives capital formation and economy. So market is just going through a normal recovery path. It's not a bubble. It's actually, because what you see is that the traditional investors are actually coming back there from the low yield environment in the fixed income space. So everybody has found that yes, if I cannot survive holding on to this low yield instruments, Let me come back to equity where I can always beat inflation.
Yeah.
So it's a normal recovery.
For how long are we likely to see this trend?
Well, it depends on how the regulators, manage the current situation. They have a role to play, because when markets is at the level we have it today, there are structures that we must put in place to safeguard it, so that we don't fall back to what we had, a few years back. So it's left to regulators to actually, come out of their shell and do the right thing by reinforcing this structure. The structure we have is not adequate enough, so they have to get that structure right, so that what we have now is not going to be a bubble. So at least so far you can retain, some of these traditional investors that have come back to the market for a long time. Then the best thing that will happen is that we see more companies coming out to raise money. And as they raise money, or even if you split, as they do all these things, it helps to sort of dilute and create a better float in the market.
All right.
Once those floats are there, we won't be seeing this kind of aggressive movement anymore. But
thank you, Tajuddin.
Thank
you, Tajuddin. Well, today is another trading day. Let's see what happens eventually. Let's hope that this bull run continues. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we cross over to London and then still look at the debt and currency market back here. Let's get an update from London with Juliana. Good morning, Juliana. Well, bring us up to speed with market data this morning as investors continue to digest the news of vaccine hopes and the unemployment numbers released yesterday.
Good morning, Chimi. Yes, well, there were 2 days of strong gains on the FTSE All-Share because of that coronavirus breakthrough news. But this morning, pretty much of a muted start. It appears as if investors are looking at domestic issues. And of course, Britain is still grappling with the second wave of coronavirus and the lockdown. And as you said, we had some pretty unimpressive unemployment data yesterday. So the FTSE 100 opened 0.44% at opening, but after a couple of minutes, it was trading flat. Same as the FTSE 250, the domestic market is trading flat today. But we do have Remembrance Day, or Armistice Day, as it's called here in the UK, where Britain remembers its war dead and those who fought for Britain who were part of the Commonwealth. So typically on November 11th, we do have a lot of speeches from the Prime Minister as well as the Queen, and you're less likely to hear any big market-breaking news or any big corporate news.
Well, those are news enough for us to track, and hopefully you're going to give us update later in the day. In the meantime, earnings season is gradually phasing out, but are there more companies whose earnings are being expected that is what talking about, or are there company news that are of interest to the markets?
Well, pretty dull on the corporate front as everybody focuses on Armistice Day. But there is some new legislation which is going to be spoken about in the House of Commons, and this is going to be impacting anybody who wants to come overseas and invest in the UK. Now, this new legislation is similar to framework that we are seeing in Australia, the USA, France and Italy. And now what it will mean is that if anybody wants to invest in Britain or take over from a company, you will have to undergo some really intensive scrutiny by the British government. Basically, what Alok Sharma, the business secretary, wants to avoid is any hostile takeover by a hostile state. And I think this really is to do with Huawei. We know that earlier this year, Boris Johnson made a pretty controversial decision by removing Huawei from any of its 5G infrastructure. And as Britain enters into a post-Brexit period, they want to make sure they remain competitive, but they want to avoid any hostile state taking over any of its pretty important or strategic components. There is a statement here from the business secretary, Alok Sharma. He says the UK remains one of the most attractive investment destinations in the world, and we want to keep it that way. But hostile actors should be in no doubt. There is no backdoor into Britain. This bill will mean that we can continue to welcome job-creating investment to our shores while shutting out those who could threaten the state safety of the British people. So this will involve 17 sectors, including artificial intelligence, nuclear strategy, communications. And it had been in place before, but there was a minimum turnover. So if your company turned over less than £70 million per annum, then you wouldn't face this scrutiny. But now there is no limit to how much your company is worth. If somebody from outside of these shores wants to come and take over, then the British government is going to get involved.
And a new one coming from Downing Street. Government has unveiled plans to implement a total ban on online junk food advertising. This is an attempt to tackle the growing obesity crisis. This is the toughest digital marketing restrictions in the world. But how on earth will this solve the problem of obesity?
Well, that's a £1 million question, Chimmy, and who knows? That's why it is going to be going into a consultation. I believe there is a 60-day consultation that will take place between those who work within the sector, those who work within the health infrastructure here in Britain. And it really comes because Boris Johnson, after we all know he was on his deathbed, wasn't he? COVID-19 almost took him. And in one of his televised addresses that he gave, I believe it was during the Conservative annual conference a couple of months ago, he did lay out some new strategies and new legislation that he believes is really important to tackle the increase of obesity, particularly in children. We do know because of COVID-19 that those who are overweight are more likely to be susceptible to worse conditions or even death. So Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, he announced these new pieces of legislation during a statement in the House of Commons yesterday, and he's really targeting digital advertising because, according to data, young children under the age of 16, if you spend between 3 and 4 hours online per day, then you could be seeing 15 billion adverts promoting junk food. So these are obviously food that contain a high amount of sugar and fat. And in this country over the past couple of years, the government have really been trying to tackle that, but now they want to increase it. Of course, this is courting much controversy. There are those who believe that the government are being too PC, trying to be too draconian, telling parents what their children can or cannot eat. And of course, the advertising industry are really not happy because they've suffered dramatically during COVID-19, particularly in cinemas, because people are not going to the cinemas and they're losing a lot of their revenue, and they're not happy about the fact that they may be losing more revenue, particularly as it's online. So this will affect online platforms such as Facebook, Google, Instagram, Twitter, but it is a consultation, so it's still early days. But this is part of Boris Johnson's strategy to try and make Britain less fatter, as he would say in his own words, Chimmy.
Well, it's only wise that you mind what you eat, reduce the calories for health's sake, isn't it?
Thanks for that advice.
All right, Juliana, we'll get an update from you later in the day. Okay, back here on the debt and currency market, or trading in the Treasury secondary market was mixed, with a bullish tilt following quiet trading in the market as participants anticipate today's primary market auction. Consequently, average yield paired by 1 basis point to 0.5% across the curve. Average yield was flat at the short and mid segments, but contracted at the long end, following demand for the 289-day to maturity instrument. Activity there was quiet, just 2 deals, and a total of just 500 billion naira made. Okay, let's look at the bond segment of the market. The Treasury bond secondary market was mixed as average yield was flat at 3.9% across the curve. Average yield paired at the short and long end due to the demand for the April 2023 and July 2045 bonds, but expanded at the mid segment following sell-offs of the March 2027. The almost secondary market average yield expanded by 6 basis points to 0.3%. Okay, with that, we draw the curtain on today's edition of the program. Thank you for watching. I'm Chimize Obi Iwago.